Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing another sleeving photo cards video. I am very much looking forward to recording another one of these videos. These are some of my favorite videos that I like to make, basically just because of like the open-endedness, and I can just kind of chat and go on about whatever. And this video will also be a little bit of a story time, so I have picked out a story to talk about while I sleeve these photo cards. I do have a couple other fun topics to talk about if my story today doesn't carry us throughout the whole entire video, but we'll just have to play it by ear and then go from there. And before I actually get started sleeving here, I do have a quick question for you guys. So all of you guys that like to watch these sleeving photo card videos, I wanted to ask if you want to see an ASMR style video of one of these sleeving videos, because I received a comment on my last sleeving video asking me, hey, can you do like an ASMR style video of you just sleeving the photo cards like without talking? And it kind of just got me like thinking of maybe it would be cool to do a video like that, just to kind of like switch it up, because I mean, thinking about it, like all of these videos, all these sleeving videos are different because I do talk about different things and I obviously sleeve different photo cards each video, but in general, like the process is all the same. I'm just sitting here talking about something and sleeving the photo cards. So I was curious if you guys would like to see just a bit of a different style sleeving video, perhaps in the near future, maybe the next one or the one after that. And I can just do a little bit of ASMR. It would probably just be like lo-fi because I only use my like phone to record. So the sounds probably wouldn't be like super amazing like with a regular microphone, but just let me know your guys' thoughts and put them in the comments below. So with that all out of the way, I'm going to start sleeving these photo cards just real quickly. I do have my sleeves here off to the left, so these are the clear Dragon Shield sleeves I use for most of my collection. Then I have the white Dragon Shield sleeves for like the transparent cards or anything I need a white sleeve for. And then I do have these Mayday Game sleeves for like the smaller cards that go into my collect books. I don't think I will need any of these today, but I still have them here just in case. So yeah, let's go ahead and begin. So I just realized that I was about to start sleeving photo cards and I didn't even go over all the groups that I have for this video. So the most photo cards I have to sleeve today is for ITZY. So I have a huge stack of ITZY photo cards. Then I have I-DLE and aespa, and then kind of a mixed bag of Red Velvet photo cards. So it's basically just solo and unit stuff. Then I also have Sujin photo cards, and there is one Sakura photo card for Le Seraphim under these as well. And then this bottom right section here is all just duplicate photo cards that I plan on selling and or just like giving away as freebies. All right, so now I'm going to begin sleeving these photo cards and then start talking about what I came up with for today. So my story is essentially about the full trip to the G-I-DLE concert. At the time they were G-I-DLE. Obviously we know them as I-DLE now, but the G-I-DLE concert in Atlanta in 2022. So I think this would have been in August of that year. And so it's a really interesting, funny story, I think, and I've told it a bunch of times to like family and friends and stuff like that. And it's really not about the concert for the most part. It's actually more about just like the trip to get down there. So all of this came about because I was getting my car serviced yesterday, like at the dealership or whatever. And it got me thinking about just that trip in general and how much of a journey it was, a journey that I never want to experience ever again. And I guess the fact that I just said that I was getting my car serviced yesterday kind of gives a clue of what this story might be about. Really quick here, I did grab my white sleeves because I like to put these film frame photo cards in the white sleeve, so I did need a white one for that. But regarding the story, so as I mentioned, this was for a G-I-DLE concert back in August of 2022. I decided to go to the Atlanta show. I think it was one of just two venues that they decided to come to like on the East Coast United States for that tour. And it was also, I think, one of the first K-pop tours. I could be wrong about this, but I feel like it was one of the first K-pop tours to like come to America after like COVID. So in 2022, COVID was still obviously like kind of a thing throughout most of the world. Funnily enough, I did get COVID shortly after this. I'm not quite sure if it was like from the concert or if it was from an Orioles game that I went to, like I think the same weekend, because if I remember my schedule correctly, I went to an Orioles game on the Friday night because I'm a psycho and I just like to do horrible things to myself. But I went to an Orioles game on Friday night and then had the wherewithal to then wake up very early Saturday morning and then plan on driving down to Atlanta, because that was the plan, right? So if you guys don't know, I live in like the DMV or whatever, quote unquote. So that's basically like the Washington, D.C. area. And so it's kind of a long drive to Atlanta, right? So when I looked it up, when I first like was evaluating, okay, do I drive or do I fly down there? It said 10 hours was the drive to Atlanta. And so I thought personally, that's not bad. And I also thought, the price of paying airline and stuff like that and just trying to get like flight and whatever was an extra cost that I wasn't willing to pay at the time. I would just rather pay that travel and just like gas. So that's what I opted to do. And so I decided to go to an Orioles game that Friday night and then wake up very early Saturday, like at 6 a.m. and told myself, okay, I'm going to spend the whole day driving down to Atlanta Saturday. And then the concert, which was on a Sunday, I was going to basically just have the whole day in Atlanta to do whatever, and then also have the concert Sunday night. And then me and my friend, because I did go with a friend and we drove down together, we were just going to drive back on the Monday afterwards. So that was kind of the rough plan. And so I was very tired going into the drive, first of all, Saturday morning, because I didn't even really spend the full time at the Orioles game that night. I left pretty early, I think maybe like in the 4th or 5th inning, but I still didn't get a lot of sleep. So we were already off to a rough start, and I'm kind of mad I did that to myself, but obviously, like, you only live once, so you kind of do things at the time that seem kind of stupid, but when you're living them, I don't know, it seemed kind of fun to me, at least. So the decision was to drive, and the plan was to wake up very early Saturday morning and go pick up my friend, basically by like, I think 7 a.m. or 7:30. I forget exactly what time that we decided on, but we wanted to be in and around Atlanta and basically like almost at the hotel by like 5 or 6 o'clock. And it didn't end up working out that way. But the plan was to go pick my friend up, and then we were going to hit up like a Dunkin' Donuts or something just to like get a little bit of breakfast and a coffee for the ride. And I myself was driving, and also I was kind of looking forward to it, honestly, because I personally have never, and I don't think since this has happened, I don't think I've ever re-driven a trip of more than like 4 hours in terms of just like me being behind the wheel driving a car. And I don't typically use cruise control when I drive a car. And for this trip, I also did not use cruise control, which I would not recommend driving 10 hours straight without using cruise control, because my leg by the end of it was like really tense and just sore from all of like the stopping and starting and just trying to obviously like control the speed on the highway. So if I remember correctly, we got on the road pretty close to when we wanted to be. So I think we were maybe starting to head down there around 8:30, 9 o'clock after we got breakfast and stuff like that. And for the first, like, I want to say 2-3 hours of the drive, it was pretty smooth. There was no traffic on the roads, and basically it was all clear. We were just driving through essentially the country part of Virginia. It was actually like very beautiful driving through the highways of like rural Virginia. But it got to a point when we just reached the border, like I think it was just before the border to North Carolina. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 3 of my brake lights come on as I'm driving and we're approaching the border to North Carolina. And I am flabbergasted because the week before this trip, I was a responsible adult, okay? And I got my car serviced at the dealership the week before this long drive because I said, this car is not about to break down on me when I'm going on this 10-hour like long road trip, essentially, right? So I was completely taken aback by the fact that 3 of my brake lights came on out of nowhere, no warning whatsoever. So it was my regular brake light, the ABS system, and I think like the anti-skid system. I think that's what that like light is. And so these come on out of nowhere, and I'm still driving on the highway, and the car is operating as normal, right? So I started like pumping the brakes a little bit just to see if they would still like work, and they seemed to work fine. There was no disturbances. The car would handle like appropriately, and everything was all good. So I asked my friend who was sitting in the passenger seat, like, hey, can you just like pull out the owner's manual and like see like what these lights mean? Because obviously all of them coming on at the same time is probably like not a good thing. So she looked them up, and unfortunately we couldn't really come to like a clear answer on why all 3 of these lights would come on at the exact same time. So what I first opted to do was essentially just pull off to the side of the road. There actually was a like little, I guess like strip mall. It was literally maybe like 4 or 5 shops and a really like, I don't know, it looked like it was kind of abandoned because obviously like think about it, we're in rural Virginia. And I mean, it's daytime, so it's not like sketch or anything like that, but pulled off to just like this empty like strip mall or whatever, basically because I wanted to look under the hood of the car and then also look under the car to see if like anything was leaking or anything like that. And I personally know almost like zero about cars, so this is kind of like blind leading the blind here in terms of me trying to dissect the problem and figure out the situation. So at first I did that and didn't really find anything off-putting about what like the hood looked like under the hood or what the engine looked like under the hood. And then there was nothing leaking underneath the car as well. And, you know, we were able to come to a safe and complete stop at this strip mall. So obviously the car was still operating fine. And so then I kind of just started to think, okay, like, what should I do, you know? So my thought process was, let's get out of this random strip mall off the side of the highway and try to get to a rest stop. So it just so happened that we were just a couple miles from the next rest stop, so that actually worked out kind of well. And so I basically, you know, turned the car back on and started driving normally back up the highway, and we got to a rest stop. And then when we were at the rest stop, I was like, okay, I feel a little bit safer now in terms of like the overall situation, but we still need to figure out like why these lights are on. And so I did what I feel like any normal person would do in my situation, and that is call their father. So I called my dad and was like, hey dad, not to alarm you, but I'm in Southern Virginia right now, and my car, like, brake lights are on, like, all 3 of them, and I have no idea why. Do you have any recommendations for, like, what I should do? And I specifically called my father because I was like, I am in no circumstances whatsoever calling my mother and worrying her about this, because I know my mother and she watches my videos, so everyone say hi to my mother, but my mother gets like worried very easily. She is very much a mother when it comes to that stuff. And so I was like, I am under no circumstances calling my mother, at least right now. I will call her later, but I will not bother her with this information right now because she's going to be doing nothing but worrying if I call her right now. So my dad's suggestion was basically to call the dealership and ask for their opinion on like what to do with the car. So that's what I did. And so I called the dealership that I normally get the car serviced at and asked to speak to a tech, and a tech did get on the phone with me, and I explained the situation to them, and they were basically just like, To be honest, bro, like if I was you, I would not drive that car and I would get that looked at like as soon as humanly possible, because those three lights like should not be on at the same time, and it's probably not safe to drive right now. And that's with me telling this tech at the dealership that like, hey, it's running fine. Like I have full control of the car, and it comes to stops, like it's fine in terms of operationally. But they still told me like, hey, like I still wouldn't recommend driving that car. And so me personally, I was like, this throws a huge wrench into this road trip, and basically just this whole plan altogether in terms of getting down to Atlanta to try to see I-DLE for this concert, which was the next day, right? Because the concert was on a Sunday. And here I am stuck at a rest stop. It's like 12, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. And I don't know really like where I'm at, because I've never been to this area of, you know, the country before, right? And so my friend was like, why don't you just try to like, you know, call up the dealerships around here, or maybe call up a Jiffy Lube or something like that. So that's what I started to do. So I started to call dealerships in the state of North Carolina. So basically that would be kind of sort of on the way, but it got to a point where all of the dealerships that I called were closed or like not open on Saturdays, or they were going to close down at like 1 or 2 p.m., which at that point in the day was like way too early for me. Like I need to get this service like ASAP, and they're going to be closed by the time I get there. So that was the day I learned that I guess all the dealerships in North Carolina kind of don't operate on Saturdays, which is not really common up here where I live, but I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit, I guess, that I learned. So the dealerships were we kind of struck out on the dealerships. And so I decided to give Jiffy Lube a call. And so the closest like North Carolina city to us at that point in time, in terms of like where we were, was Greensboro. And so I decided to look and see if there were any Jiffy Lube in Greensboro, and there were a couple Jiffy Lubes in Greensboro. So I kind of just picked one, explained the situation, and they were kind of telling me like, hey man, we can't really help with that, because what it sounds like the issue you're having is it's kind of maybe an electrical problem. Because I told them like, hey, it's just the lights coming on like in my dash. It doesn't really affect the control or anything like that of the car. And Jiffy Lube was explaining to me that they don't really do diagnostics, which is like this little machine that they hook up essentially to the engine that reads the engine's computer, and it tells them basically what's happening. And so Jiffy Lube doesn't do that. And so I couldn't go to Jiffy Lube, but they were nice enough to recommend me a different place. I forget, honestly, like it's a chain like service station, but I forget the name. It's been a couple years now, so I don't really remember, but they recommended me another place in Greensboro to give a call and basically just see if they could do a diagnostics to see what's going on. So at this point, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. Like my anxiety is through the roof. I've made about 10 phone calls within the span of like 15, 20 minutes. I still haven't really gotten any closer to figuring out why my car is lighting up with these different lights on the dash. So I call this other place and I explain the situation to them like, hey, I'm not local. I'm on a road trip. My car's acting weird. They have these lights on. If I come by today, like, would I be able to get in and be seen today? Because like I said, I'm like on a road trip. I can't drop my car off and come back tomorrow, right? Like that's just not an option. So I was like, can I come by and basically get a little bit of a guarantee that y'all can at least look at my car? It doesn't necessarily have to be right away, but like just before you guys close today, can y'all look at my car? And they basically said there's no guarantee, but if you get here quick enough and, you know, we're not super busy, then we will try our best to take a look at it. So I was like, this is my only like shred of hope right now. So I'm going to take it. And so even though Greensboro wasn't on the way to Atlanta in terms of like the roads we were taking, I was like, we are taking a little bit of a detour and we are going to visit the great city of Greensboro, North Carolina to try to get my car fixed. So it takes about, I want to say, half hour, 45 minutes to get into Greensboro and get to the service station that we took it to, and basically, get there and go inside and explain to them like, hey, I'm the dude that called on the phone, basically saying that like, I'm from out of town, I'm looking to get this car checked out today, if at all humanly possible. Basically just like asking them to sympathize with me, right? I'm not trying to get any preferential treatment, but it's like I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place here. So I just explained the situation and they were like, we will try to look at it and we will call you, when we look at it and see what's going on. So this place was luckily in like a huge shopping center area. And so there was a Chick-fil-A that was essentially right next door. So me and my friend, it was like a little bit after lunchtime anyway, so me and my friend headed over to the Chick-fil-A right next door and grabbed some lunch. And we thought it was going to be maybe like 2.5 hours at the most. And it ended up taking a lot longer than that, which again, I don't blame them whatsoever. I'm kind of just coming out of nowhere, didn't have an appointment, anything like that. But it just took a little bit longer than we thought it would. And this was also the point while we were sitting in a Chick-fil-A for like 3 hours plus that I decided to finally call my mother and inform her of the situation. And I basically started the conversation off with like, hey mom, it's me. Don't freak out, but we have a bit of a problem here. And was trying to just like easily like let her down easy in terms of like what the situation was. And I told her, I was like, yeah, so we're at this service station. I don't really have any idea what might be wrong with the car. As you know, I got it serviced last week and there was nothing wrong with it, and now all of a sudden I'm driving down to Atlanta on a road trip and now there's a problem with it, and I don't know why, but this is the situation, and just try not to worry. And so I had a conversation with my mother, and she was obviously very understanding, but she also did like, exhibit some worry, and she wanted me to give her updates as the, day progressed on. So that's when I decided to finally call my mother and inform her of everything. So we had been sitting in Chick-fil-A for, I want to say, close to maybe 4 hours at this point. And we knew my car was getting looked at this point because we couldn't see it like out front anymore. So we knew they had like driven it around back and were taking a look at it, but we still hadn't received any calls from them. So we kind of just decided, let's just go ahead and like walk over there and sit in their waiting room just to like, be there, right? So they didn't have to call us. And I think there was maybe like a half hour to 45 minutes more of sitting and waiting in their waiting room to like wait for them to tell us what may or may not be the problem. But eventually the, secretary lady that like runs the desk at this service station called me up, and also had the tech there with her, and the tech was telling me, everything that they did. And they actually said when they took the car to the back, the lights didn't come on. So I guess it had been sitting for long enough to where the lights went off, so that whenever it was turned on back again, like they didn't come back on. I'm not really sure why that would ever happen, but maybe someone who like knows cars can explain that to me. But she basically said they couldn't run a diagnostics test, which was the whole point of me coming here, because the lights weren't on. So it's like, what's the point of running diagnostics if the lights aren't on and the car is not telling you that anything is wrong, right? So she said she did like a full like what do they call it, like a multi-point inspection or whatever, looked at the brakes, everything operationally looked good, which, like I said, makes sense because it's like the car, as I was driving it, was fully controllable. It was operating normally. It was just that these stupid lights are on. And so I asked her, I was like, well, would you drive the car as it is right now? Would you consider it safe to drive? And she was like, yes, I would. And I was like, okay, what if these lights come back on? Would you still consider it safe to drive? And she said, quite honestly, everything I've seen like in this car that I've looked at, I can't find anything wrong with this car. So yes, I would also consider it safe to drive even if the lights come on. And so that was reassuring to hear, at least for me, but I still had a lot of anxiety the rest of this drive about those lights coming on. And so we'll get into that, I guess, right now. So at this point, it was, I want to say after 5 o'clock, maybe close to 6 o'clock, we were super behind schedule and we were still like barely through middle North Carolina, trying to get to Atlanta, Georgia, and we were super behind schedule. So I think we weren't supposed to, and we didn't end up getting into the city of Atlanta and our hotel accommodations until close to like 10:30, 11 o'clock, which is about 5 hours after we had originally intended to get into the city. But the rest of the trip was also funny because I don't use the AC a lot for my car. I'm just one of those types of people that whenever it's super hot outside, I would just much prefer to have all the windows down, not like use gas or anything like that to use AC or anything. And so for the first like part of the trip, before the lights came on, right? Before the problem happened, I was using the AC because I obviously have a passenger. I was trying to, just like look out for my friend and keep them comfortable because, I mean, we're talking about the middle of August here and we're talking about like in kind of like the southern United States. So we all know if we live in the United States, it's super hot, it's super humid, super muggy, and just like sticky and gross outside. So it's probably better to have the AC on days like that. But me personally, I would just ride it out and go with the windows down. But like I said, I was trying to keep my friend comfortable. So we were driving with the AC for that entire like first part of the drive. But because the lights came on and we had that little like snafu with the brake lights, I had convinced myself that it was a possibility of an electrical issue, like just within the engine or under the hood somewhere. And I had convinced myself that perhaps like the AC unit was leaking fluid or something, and that was getting into the electrical systems, and that's what was making the lights come on. And I had actually presented this idea to the tech, and she said it's kind of close by, but not really. She said she would be really surprised if any like fluid or water or anything got into those systems. But I kind of looked at that as like a non-zero chance. So for the rest of the trip, I was like, we're not using AC. So we're going to be driving with the windows down. And I was like, please be okay with this because I don't want to chance these lights like coming on again. I was basically telling my friend, like, please be okay with this. And she was cool with it. She was understanding. And of course, I was already super apologetic because I'm like, I'm sure this is how you didn't want to spend your Saturday, right? You probably just thought a nice, easy, like 10-hour drive and we would be in Atlanta. But unfortunately, we have all this extra stuff going on now, right? But the reason I bring up the fact that we didn't use AC for the rest of the drive is because I think right about when we got to South Carolina, it started to get really stormy and we had to drive through a whole bunch of rain and thunderstorms, which meant winding the windows up because we obviously like don't want to let rain in the car, and then basically just like melting inside the car because it's so hot outside and we're not using the AC. I was using the air, but it's just obviously taking the air straight from the outside, which is mostly hot air, right? Even though it's raining, it's just hot air that the car is circulating. So that was a pretty miserable like second half of the drive, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. We probably didn't have to do that in hindsight, but like I said, my anxiety was just like through the roof that day. When I looked at my Fitbit at the end of the day, this is also something that was very funny because I was wearing a Fitbit at this time, and I think my active minutes at the end of the day, even though I was basically sitting in a car the entire day, my active minutes were over like 400, and that's because my heart rate for the entire day was basically above like 130 most of the day. Like I was absolutely, like I said, just Anxiety through the roof. I was like, this could not go any worse. But eventually, we made it through South Carolina. We made it through Georgia, through all the rainstorms. It was also really difficult to drive through the rainstorms because we had the windows closed. We were not doing AC. It was dark outside. And so what happens when it's hot in the car and you have cold rain coming down on the car? The windows fog up. So I'm sitting here trying to drive through pouring rain, also through like foggy windshield, and just trying to like not die, essentially, right? It sounds a little bit, probably like the way I'm describing it, more dramatic than it actually was, but it still was like, I don't know, it felt that dramatic to me at the time. I was like, this is like just the worst thing ever, right? So we eventually made it to Atlanta, and we made it to our accommodations, which was actually like, I want to say a block or two away from the venue. So this concert in 2022 was at I think it's the Cobb Energy Center. So it's actually just on the northwest side, just outside the Atlanta Beltway. And so we were able to find a hotel that was about 2 blocks away. So basically we didn't have to use the car to go anywhere in terms of like to and from the concert. So that was actually really nice. We could just walk to and from the venue because we were close enough. And something that was also pretty cool was the parking garage for our hotel. We had to park on like one of the upper levels, but what was cool about it is that you could see Truist Park, or Truist Field, I forget what it is, but that's the stadium where the Atlanta Braves play. So you could see like the top of that stadium like in the distance. So I thought, being a baseball fan, that was pretty cool that we got to see that. But when we got in Saturday, like I said, it was really late. We didn't really have any time to do anything, even though we wanted to do stuff when we got there because we planned to get in around dinner time. So we essentially just like went to our rooms and then went to bed and decided to fight the next day on Sunday to decide like what to do and try to salvage what was left of this trip that started off like really, really horribly. And for what it's worth, the next day was actually pretty like cool. Like we didn't have any problems that we ran into. So our decision essentially was to sleep in because we got in so late the night before. We wanted to sleep in till like 10 or 11 o'clock or whatever, and then maybe go try to grab like a brunch or something. And then we also wanted to visit the K-Pop store, which I'm sure a lot of you, if you live in the South or if you've like made any trips to Atlanta, you know exactly the store I'm talking about. So that's exactly what we did, and we headed over to the K-Pop store. It's in, I think, Doraville, which is also kind of like on the edge of the Atlanta Beltway, but it's on the northeast side. And so the K-Pop store, I think, is literally just called the K-Pop store. And I thought it was so cool going in there because at the time, this was the first time I had ever been in a like K-pop specific store where it was like only K-pop stuff. So just a whole bunch of albums and photo cards and keychains and just a whole bunch of like cute, cool stuff everywhere. And so for me, this was like a super big deal. And I was really blown away by that store. And it's actually like, it has so much stuff in it, but it's also like a really small space. So I'm kind of surprised they're able to fit that much stuff in there. But it was really crowded that day because obviously like I-DLE was in town. So I think a lot of people were going to that store maybe to just pick up some things for the concert or some other knickknacks or what have you. So I think I picked up a couple things there. I know I picked up like my Blackpink like tin case cards, which you have seen on my shelf before. I picked up my Red Velvet lanyard, which you also have probably seen on my shelf before. I picked that up at this store. I can't remember if I picked up any albums. I honestly can't remember if I picked up any albums, but I did pick up a couple small things. And I did get a free poster, so that was kind of cool. When I was checking out, they were like, "Do you want a free poster?" I was like, "Yes, I would love a free poster." So I got a free poster. I think my friend, because she's like a big GOT7 fan, she picked up a couple of GOT7 albums. And so that was really cool to experience. And after that, we kind of just decided, okay, let's go somewhere for lunch. And we got lunch. And we wanted to be over at the concert venue because I think the concert was starting maybe like 7 or 7:30. I told her, let's try to be there early and see if we can just like get inside the venue early to like check out merch or whatever. And so we actually ended up getting back to the place, which, by the way, I had to drive everywhere that day, and my car was once again not acting suspicious. The lights were not coming on. It was driving perfectly fine. I'm like, so what was all this nonsense the day before that like wrecked our plan and had us like spend an extra 5 hours driving down to Atlanta, you know? Like, what gives? But after lunch, we got back to the hotel and we waited there, I think, for maybe like an hour. I think we might have like showered or something and gotten ready. And then we decided to walk over to the venue, and we got over to the venue, and there was already a couple people there, but me and my friend were pretty much like one of the first, I would say maybe 20 people that started lining up. So we were like very like first in line, like pretty close to first in line. And so, you know, obviously, you know, the doors opened a couple hours later, and, you know, the concert was a really awesome concert. It was the first concert I personally had been to since the Big Bang concert I went to in 2015. So it had been 7 years since my last concert. My seats weren't incredible for this show, unfortunately, but I still just appreciated, and I'm still like a big advocate for this. Like, as long as I'm there somewhere in the crowd, like that's all I really care about. So I was very happy nonetheless with like how the concert was, and I-DLE was of course like super awesome, and they performed a lot of songs that I really enjoyed. And so it was also like a smaller venue too, so it was very like I guess intimate and very personal, the way they would interact with the crowd and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that concert. It was a really good concert. But I also am happy that like I-DLE is now so much bigger in terms of just like popularity and growth or whatever, that they can very easily go to an arena that sits like, you know, 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 people, and they can very easily sell it out. And I know that I've seen for their current world tour coming up, I think in Taiwan. So they have a show in Taiwan, I think. And I think the venue they have is like 50,000 people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that venue is sold out, and it also sold out like very quickly. So just thinking about where I-DLE was like not even 4 full years ago. So this was like 3.5 years ago. And like I said, keep in mind, this is like after COVID. And so things was like just opening back up. So that's also perhaps why the venue was a little bit smaller, but I don't think the venue sat more than like 2,000 people. Or if it did, it was maybe like 2,500, right? So there was not a lot of seats in that venue. And so just to think about like how much they have grown as a group in popularity in a very short amount of time is just like really awesome to see, and really just like cool to think about. So I do have one more sleeve here. Yes, this is indeed the last sleeve for this little box of sleeves here. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to put this in. I want to put this in that way. So I'm going to go ahead and sleeve this photo card, open the new box of sleeves, and then it looks like we might have like 5 or 6 more photo cards to sleeve after this. And then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. So I guess to put a little bit of a bow on this story about the trip to the I-DLE concert back in 2022. Oh wow, did I open that upside down? No, I didn't. The sleeves are just in upside down. That's very weird. I've never seen that before, where Dragon Shield puts the sleeves in upside down. I opened this right side up, but are all of these upside down? They are. I'm gonna flip these real quick. Hang on. All right, so now to put a bow on this little like Atlanta trip story. We went to the concert. We enjoyed the concert. And the next day, we obviously had to drive back home, and that trip also was uneventful. We drove back once again with no AC, which thank you so much to my friend for enduring that. I had a little bit less of a problem because, like I said, I pretty much always in the summertime drive without AC, but we drove back. The lights did not come on. My car was all good. We got back in pretty good time. I want to say it was like 10 or 11 hours getting back home, and it was a pretty much all right good time coming back home. But what was funny was what happened, I want to say 3 weeks to a month later. So I'm driving back home from the post office. I'm just doing like a normal post office run, and I'm sitting at a stoplight. I'm maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles from my house. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, like every single light on the dash turns on at the same time. Like all the brake lights, once again, like check engine light, temperature light, like every single light all at the same time. And I was like, okay, that's not good. And like I said, mind you, this is like 3-4 weeks after this whole ordeal with the Atlanta trip. And it was like, I want to say 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when this happened, when I was driving home from the post office. And I was like, okay, one, it's too late in the day, so like I don't have time for this. So let me just go ahead. I'm going to drive home, park it, for the night. And then in the morning, I will make an appointment at the dealership to get it checked. Because I happen to have the next day off, which I am super thankful for that this happened like during off days for me. But I ended up taking it in to the dealership the next day to like get it looked at. And I thought, because we just had that whole ordeal with Atlanta, that it was going to be like some sort of electrical issue, like there's some electrical problem going on, and that's why the dashboard just like keeps malfunctioning over and over again, right? That's what I thought it was going to be. But then unfortunately, I was sitting in the waiting room, and it had already been like 2 hours, I want to say, and I felt like that was a bit longer than what it should be for like what I thought it was. And then all of a sudden, the lady comes out, and she's like, hey, can I talk to you over here? And I'm like, uh-oh, like she's pulling me away from other people to tell me something that's wrong with my car. That's like never a good sign. And so she pulls me over to like this little side table that's in the dealership, and she like just basically breaks the news to me. She was like, your radiator is completely like shot. Like your radiator just doesn't work anymore. The fluid that, or like, I think it's coolant, right? That runs through the radiator, and like the radiator stores. She was like, the little, like, I guess, well that is supposed to hold the coolant has a hole in the bottom of it. And so all the coolant just drained out. And so the radiator wasn't actually pumping coolant throughout the engine at all whatsoever. And so she was like, the radiator is like almost completely melted. The connector to the engine, or one of the connectors, or several of the connectors, like I said, I'm not a car guy, right? So I'm kind of just trying to remember what she told me. But she said the connectors to the engine were also pretty severely melted. She was like, the engine is fine for the most part. It's just the connector. She was like, if you drove it for maybe like 20 to 30 more minutes, your engine probably would be completely shot, and I would tell you the engine would have to be replaced, which would ultimately end up meaning like you probably need to get a new car, right? And so she was telling me all this information, and I'm like, man, it just cannot get any worse. But then I was thinking, I was like, is this related at all to the Atlanta trip from like a month ago? Like, is it possible that that was like a precursor like 3-4 weeks ago, and now it's just finally like fully materializing? So that was kind of the main question going through my head, both at the time she was telling me this and also the time when I got my car back, because I just left it there. I took a loaner car, and I had a loaner car for like 2 weeks or something like that. It took a really long time for them to fix it, but I understand that was like a really big piece of, like it's a huge car part, right? It's a crucial car part to have. And so I think they also said that they were like back ordered or something, like one of the parts that they needed. And so we also had to wait a little bit for that part to come in. But I had like a loaner car for 2 weeks, and when I got my original car back and took it for a test drive with the tech that worked on my car, I asked him this question. I was like, yeah, so I noticed the 3 brake lights came on about 3 to 4 weeks before this whole ordeal, and then they kind of just went away without any explanation. Do you think that this is some sort of like a precursor to what happened here? And he was like, honestly, without a diagnostics test, I have no idea, and I honestly don't even want to insinuate like what it may or may not have been. So I still don't really know to this day if those two things were correlated. I like to believe that they were because, I mean, I feel like that's kind of weird, right? But like I said, no hard answers. We are done with sleeving all of these photo cards, and for the most part, that is the entire story. So you guys got to hear me talk about my horrific trip down to Atlanta, but the awesome concert that followed once I finally got to Atlanta, and then also the car troubles I had like a month afterwards. So I feel like this was a very productive sleeving photo cards video. So I'm gonna take a break real quick, just bring like the boxes back into frame, and then I will do an outro. All right, so that is all I got for this sleeving photo cards video today. I hope you guys enjoyed the little story time that we had. I actually wasn't sure 100% if I had told that story before at some point or other on the channel. I actually did ask on my Instagram yesterday, which wouldn't have been yesterday by the time you see this video, but yesterday I asked on my Instagram stories if I had told that story before, like somewhere on my channel, and no one responded with, yes, I have. So I'm assuming I haven't. And so I hope you guys enjoyed that little story time. I had a lot of fun revisiting it, and I kind of just like, when I sit back and think about it today, I kind of just sit back and laugh. So really fun discussing that again. My plan for the next 2 videos on the channel is going to be a storing photo cards video next week, and then the week after that, I plan on doing my photo card collection tour video, so my 6-month update. I thought it just kind of made more sense, and I did get a couple comments on my last video when I asked about it. I just thought it made more sense to do a sleeving and then storing video before I do the photo card tour, because that way I have all the photo cards I currently have on hand available to essentially like show as part of my collection in the tour. So that's the order I decided to do, so that's why we have the sleeving video today, and then we'll move on to the storing photo cards video, and then after that we will do the photo card tour. I did also want to take a quick opportunity to ask you guys if there were any other videos that I don't normally do that you guys might want to see. So in addition to the ASMR like sleeving video that I asked about earlier in this video, are there any other videos that you guys want to see? Because I know at this point in time there aren't a lot of unboxings breaking up like all of the photo card content videos, and even though I personally don't think it's like super repetitive, because I could watch, you know, all of these types of photo card videos like all day, every day and still be entertained, but that's just me. I do recognize it is kind of just like a cycle right now. So, you know, we're obviously just getting photo cards in a haul and then sleeving them and then storing them and then kind of just like repeating the cycle. And like I said, I think that's all cool and whatever, but I still want to ask you guys if, you know, that's cool with you guys, or if you want to see some like different stuff. I don't typically step out of my comfort zone too much lately, but you know, if you guys want to see some other stuff, I can maybe give it a shot. But aside from all that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up and get out of here. So thank you guys so much for watching to this point in the video. If you did, I hope you have an awesome day or night whenever you watch this, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Bye.